They say every Omega knows their place. Lyrra knew hers. Invisible, silent, forgotten. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one notices when you slip into the forest at night. No one sees when you save a king. True strength isn't found in the wolf you're born with, but in the heart that chooses kindness when the world has only shown you cruelty. And sometimes, the smallest act of compassion can shake kingdoms. Sometimes the cruelest prison isn't made of stone and iron. It's made of whispers, of pack law, of being told you're nothing until you believe it. But even nothing can become dangerous when it saves the wrong life. Or perhaps, the right one. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. The wilderness had hunger. That's what the pack elders always said. Their voices harsh as the winter wind that clawed through Dustfall's crumbling packhouse. The wilderness had hunger, and Omegas who wandered too far became nothing more than bones picked clean by things with teeth. But on this night, this storm-ravaged, thunder-split night, Lyrra wasn't afraid of what lurked in the wilderness. She was afraid of what waited for her back in the pack. Her bare feet slipped on rain-soaked earth as she ran, clutching the cloth-wrapped scrap of bread against her chest like it was treasure instead of the moldy corner piece the cook had forgotten to throw away. Rain plastered her threadbare dress to her too-thin frame, and somewhere above, lightning tore across the sky like the gods themselves were screaming. She shouldn't be here. Wolfless Omegas had no business in the woods after dark. Especially not ones like her. Servants in their own pack, locked in storage rooms for daring to speak, for daring to breathe too loudly. But something had pulled her here. That strange, aching tug in her chest, the one she'd felt since childhood, the one that whispered in a language she didn't understand. It had been screaming at her all evening, dragging her forward like an invisible chain wrapped around her ribs. Someone needs you. Someone is dying. Lyrra skidded down a steep embankment, catching herself on gnarled roots before she tumbled into the ravine below. And that's when she saw him. The wolf. He was massive, bigger than any wolf should be, bigger than the alpha males who patrolled Dustfall's borders. His fur was black as the space between stars, and he lay collapsed beside a fallen tree. His chest barely rising, barely falling. Even from here she could see the wounds. Deep gashes torn across his ribs, weeping dark blood onto the mud. Golden markings along his legs and flanks, like embers dying in ash, flickered weakly, then faded. Burns that looked like they'd been carved by something unnatural. No animal could have made wounds like that. Lyrra's pull intensified, sending waves of sensation through her small body. She'd learned to trust it over the years. This instinct that told her when the beta's daughter was lying, when the guards were about to strike, when someone meant harm. But this was different. Noble, the pull whispered. Ancient, powerful, and broken. The wolf's eyes opened. They were molten gold, luminous even in the darkness, burning like twin suns in the rain. And they fixed on her with an intelligence that stole her breath. Not the blank stare of an animal. Something more. Something that knew. Lyrra's hands trembled as she began climbing down the ravine. Every rational thought screamed at her to run, to go back, to hide in her corner of the packhouse and pray no one noticed she'd been gone. But her instinct had never lied to her. Not once. And it was telling her that this creature, this dying, magnificent creature, had honor. She dropped the last few feet, landing with a splash in the mud beside him. Close, he was even more enormous. His head alone was nearly the size of her torso. His paws wider than her outstretched hands. Those golden eyes tracked her every movement, wary but too weak to do more than watch. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice shook like leaves in wind. "I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's chest rumbled. Not quite a growl, more like he was trying to warn her away, trying to protect her from himself even as he bled into the earth. Lyrra unwrapped the cloth with careful fingers. The bread inside was hard as stone, spotted with mold. The scrap from this morning's loaf that the cook had tossed into the waste bucket before Lyrra fished it out when no one was looking. It was all she'd eaten today. All she would eat until tomorrow if she was lucky. But the wolf was dying. She could feel it, the way his presence flickered like a candle in a storm, growing dimmer with each labored breath. The golden markings on his fur pulsed once, twice, then went dark. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, soft and sad. "You feel too much, little star. The world will break you for it." Maybe the world would break her. Maybe she was already broken, a wolfless omega, a ghost haunting her own pack. But this wolf mattered. Lyrra looked at the bread in her hands. She should split it. Keep half for herself. That's what anyone with sense would do. Instead, she held out both pieces. The wolf's golden eyes widened, and for a heartbeat she could have sworn she saw something human flicker in their depths. Surprise, confusion, and then gratitude. He lifted his head with agonizing slowness, every movement clearly costing him. His muzzle was scarred, marked with old burns and fresh wounds. But when he took the bread from her palm, his massive jaws were gentle as a whisper. He never touched her skin, never even grazed her with his teeth. Lyrra watched him eat, this broken, dying wolf who somehow still had the strength to be careful with her, who somehow still thought about protecting her even as his own life bled away into the mud. "I'll come back tomorrow," she whispered, reaching out to touch his rain-soaked fur. It was softer than she'd expected, despite being matted with blood and dirt. Warm despite the cold rain. "I promise." The wolf's eyes closed, not in death, but in something that looked almost like peace. The faintest golden glow pulsed once beneath her fingertips, then stilled. Lyrra climbed back up the ravine as the storm intensified, her empty stomach already gnawing at her, Sylvena's punishments waiting like wolves at her door. But for the first time in years, since her mother had died and left her to the pack's mercy, she felt something other than emptiness. She felt needed. The pack house loomed against the pre-dawn sky like a judge passing sentence. Lyrra crept through the servants' entrance just as the first rays of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, her dress still damp from last night's rain, her feet leaving muddy prints on the kitchen's stone floor. She made it exactly 3 steps before Sylvena's voice cut through the morning quiet. "Where have you been?" The beta's daughter stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face carved from ice and cruelty. Behind her, 2 of her friends peered around the doorframe with matching expressions of vicious delight. Lyrra's instinct pulsed. Fear beneath the anger, always fear. Fear of what Lyrra might become, might reveal, might dare to challenge. "The window in the storage room was broken," Lyrra said quietly, eyes on the floor. "I went for a walk." "A walk." Sylvena's voice could have frozen fire. "In the middle of the night. In a storm. I couldn't sleep." "Because you're useless," Sylvena finished, stepping closer. "Wolfless. Weak. A stain on this pack." But Lyrra had never told them the truth. She'd never told them about the pull that had haunted her since childhood. She'd never told them what her mother whispered the night she died. "Your wolf isn't gone, little star. She's just waiting." And she certainly never told them that 3 weeks ago, everything changed. The wolf should have died. Every law of nature said so. Wounds that deep, burns that severe. No creature should survive them, let alone begin to heal. But Lyrra returned the next night. And the next. And the next. 21 nights of stolen moments in the darkness. 21 nights of slipping through shadows while the pack slept. 21 nights of bringing scraps she could barely afford to lose. And slowly, impossibly, the wolf began to heal. On the 4th night, Lyrra brought water from the river in a cracked clay bowl she'd found in the storage room. The wolf's golden eyes tracked her as she knelt beside him, and when she tilted the bowl to his muzzle, he drank with the same careful gentleness he'd shown with the bread. "You understand me, don't you?" she whispered, setting the bowl aside. "I don't know how, but you do." The wolf's ear flicked, subtle but deliberate. Lyrra's breath caught. She reached out slowly, her hand hovering over the worst of his wounds, a deep gash across his ribs that had finally stopped bleeding. "This is going to hurt," she murmured, unwrapping the strip of cloth she'd torn from her own dress. She'd stolen antiseptic salve from the pack healer's supply room, her heart hammering the entire time, certain she'd be caught. But she'd made it out, made it here. and now she dampened the cloth with river water and began cleaning the wound with trembling hands. The wolf went rigid, a low growl rumbling through his massive frame, but he didn't pull away, didn't snap. His eyes squeezed shut, his breathing ragged, but he stayed perfectly still and let her work. "I'm sorry," Lyrra whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I'm so sorry." When she finished, the golden markings along his ribs pulsed once, faint like embers stirring beneath ash. The glow was barely visible, but it was there. And Lyrra felt something respond in her chest. Warmth. Pull. A sense of connection that made her gasp. The wolf's eyes opened, fixing on her with an intensity that stole her breath. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Her hand on his fur. His gaze locked with hers, something ancient and inexplicable humming between them. Then the moment passed, and Lyrra pulled her hand back, her heart racing for reasons she didn't understand. By the 8th night she'd started talking to him. Not just instructions or apologies but real conversation, the kind she'd never had with anyone in the pack. The kind that spilled out of her like water from a broken dam. "They call me useless," she said quietly, sitting beside him as rain pattered against the canopy above. "The pack, I mean. I don't have a wolf. Never shifted, not once. Most wolves show their first shift around 12 or 13. I'm 19 now and... nothing." The wolf shifted slightly, moving his massive head closer to her. Listening. Lyrra drew her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "My mother used to tell me it didn't matter. She said my wolf was just sleeping, that she'd wake when the time was right. But my mother..." Her voice cracked. "My mother died when I was 7. And I've been alone ever since." The wolf made a soft sound, almost a whine but deeper. "Better. The pack took me in because they had to," Lyrra continued, staring into the darkness. "Pack law says you don't abandon your own. But they made sure I knew I was a burden. The beta's daughter, Sylvena, she's the worst. She goes out of her way to remind everyone that I'm broken. That I don't belong." The golden markings along the wolf's legs pulsed, brighter this time, almost angry. Lyrra reached out instinctively, her hand settling on his fur. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm used to it." But the moment her palm made contact with his fur, the warmth in her chest flared, stronger than before, almost electric. The wolf's eyes locked with hers, glowing molten gold, and Lyrra felt something shift inside her. Deep in her core something stirred. It was faint, barely more than a flutter, like the whisper of wings against her ribs. But it was there. Real. Alive. Her wolf. Lyrra gasped, pulling her hand back, her eyes wide. "Did you feel that?" The wolf's gaze was steady, knowing. And somehow she knew the answer. On the 12th night, she told him about her mother's death. "They said it was rogues," Lyrra whispered, her voice hollow. "A random attack on the border. My mother was there, and she fought them off long enough for the patrol to arrive. But she was already gone by the time they reached her." The wolf pressed closer, his warmth a comfort against the cold. "But I don't think it was random," Lyrra continued, her hands twisting in her lap. "The night before she died, she told me something. She said, 'Your wolf isn't gone, little star. She's just waiting. And when she wakes, you'll understand why they're afraid.'" The wolf went very still. "I didn't know what she meant," Lyrra said. "I was 7. I thought she was just trying to make me feel better. But now I wonder if she knew something. If she died protecting me from something bigger than rogues." The golden markings flared, bright enough to illuminate the ravine, bright enough that Lyrra could see the wolf's face clearly. His eyes were fixed on her with an expression that looked almost like grief, like he understood, like he knew. "Who are you?" Lyrra whispered. The wolf didn't answer, couldn't answer. But the way he looked at her, the way the bond between them pulsed with something warm and protective and impossibly old, told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't just a wolf. He was something more. By the 15th night, the wolf could stand. Lyrra watched in awe as he rose on shaking legs, his massive frame towering over her even when he was weakened. The golden markings along his body glowed steadily now, no longer flickering. His wounds had closed, leaving only scars, terrible beautiful scars that spoke of survival. "You're healing," Lyrra breathed, her eyes shining. "You're actually healing." The wolf took a tentative step forward, testing his strength. Then another. He moved with a grace that shouldn't have been possible for something so large, so powerful. And when he turned to look at her, Lyrra saw something in his eyes that made her heart stutter. "Thank you." She smiled, a real smile, the first in years. "You're welcome." But as she turned to leave, something prickled at the back of her neck, a sensation like being watched. She froze, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the ravine. Nothing. But the feeling didn't fade. The wolf growled, low and dangerous, his eyes fixed on the tree line. He positioned himself between Lyrra and whatever lurked in the shadows, his entire body coiled with protective intent. "What is it?" Lyrra whispered. The wolf didn't move, didn't relax. And Lyrra realized with a cold certainty that they weren't alone. Someone or something was watching them. On the 18th night, the wolf pressed his nose to her palm. It was a simple gesture, barely more than a touch. But the moment his muzzle made contact with her skin, the world exploded. Heat flooded through Lyrra's body, starting in her palm and radiating outward like wildfire. The warmth in her chest, the one she'd been feeling for weeks, ignited, blazing so bright she gasped. Golden light burst from her skin, from the wolf's markings, wrapping around them both in a shimmering cocoon. And deep inside her, her wolf roared. Not a whisper, not a flutter. Roar. Lyrra stumbled backward, her hand flying to her chest. What was that? The wolf's eyes were glowing now, pure molten gold, his entire body radiating power. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and lowered his head until his forehead rested against hers. The bond snapped into place. Not complete, not yet, but present, real, undeniable. Lyrra's breath came in short gasps, her mind reeling. She could feel him, not just his presence but his emotions, his pain, his gratitude, his fierce, overwhelming need to protect her. "Who are you?" she whispered again, her voice breaking. The wolf pulled back, his eyes holding hers. And though he couldn't speak, couldn't explain, Lyrra felt the answer settle in her bones. Someone who will never let you be alone again. The 21st night brought rain. Not the violent storm of their first meeting, but a steady, soaking downpour that drenched Lyrra within minutes. She'd brought food again. Actual meat this time, stolen from the pack stores, and found the wolf waiting for her at the top of the ravine. He was stronger now, almost fully healed. And when he saw her shivering in the rain, he moved without hesitation. The wolf led her to an overhang of rock she hadn't noticed before, a natural shelter tucked into the hillside. He nudged her inside with his massive head, then curled his body around hers, blocking the rain and cold. Lyrra should have been afraid, should have pulled away. Instead, she leaned into his warmth, her hands buried in his fur, her head resting against his side. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, a rhythm that matched her own. "I don't understand what's happening," she whispered into the darkness. "I don't understand what you are, or why I feel like I've known you forever. I don't want this to end." The wolf shifted, his chin resting gently on top of her head. And Lyrra felt it again, that pulse of warmth, that whisper of connection. "It won't end," the bond seemed to say. "This is only the beginning." Lyrra closed her eyes, exhaustion and emotion pulling her under. For the first time in 12 years she felt safe, protected, wanted. And as she drifted into sleep, wrapped in the warmth of a wolf who was so much more than he seemed, she didn't notice the figures moving through the trees beyond their shelter. She didn't hear the whispered conversation carried on the wind. "Someone is helping him. The king isn't dead. Find the girl. Kill her before the bond completes." But the wolf heard. and his eyes blazed gold in the darkness, a promise and a threat. Touch her, and I will burn your world to ash. The 22nd night should have been like all the others. Lyrra slipped from the packhouse just after midnight, a bundle of stolen meat wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath her cloak. The cook had left it unguarded for just a moment, long enough for Lyrra to snatch it and disappear into the shadows. Her heart still hammered from the theft, but the wolf needed to eat. He was stronger, yes, but not yet whole. The forest was unusually quiet as she made her way toward the ravine. No crickets chirping, no owls calling, just silence, thick and suffocating like the woods themselves were holding their breath. Lyrra's instincts screamed at her to turn back. She didn't listen. She was halfway to the shelter when she heard the voices. Certain she's been coming this way. Tracks lead straight through here. If the Omega girl found him, the king might still be alive. Then we kill her before she can complete the bond. Lyrra's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against a tree, barely breathing, her fingers clutching the bundle of meat so tightly her knuckles went white. Through the darkness, she could make out shapes. 4 of them, maybe 5, moving through the trees with the practiced silence of trained hunters. Not pack wolves. Something else. Something dangerous. Run, her instinct screamed. Run now. Lyrra turned, her foot catching on an exposed root, and the snap of the twig beneath her boot echoed through the forest like a gunshot. The voices stopped. There! Lyrra ran. She tore through the underbrush, branches whipping at her face, her lungs burning as she pushed herself faster than she'd ever moved. The ravine was close, so close. She could just reach it, reach him. A body slammed into her from the side, sending her crashing to the ground. The meat went flying. Pain exploded through her shoulder as she hit the earth hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Got her! Lyrra kicked out blindly, her boot connecting with something solid. A grunt of pain, a curse, and then hands were grabbing her, hauling her upright. She twisted, clawed, fought with a ferocity that surprised even her. One of the hunters caught her wrist, twisting it until she cried out. Feisty for an Omega, he sneered. No wonder the king. Lyrra drove her knee into his stomach with every ounce of strength she possessed. He doubled over, releasing her, and she stumbled backward, only to be caught by another set of hands. These ones were stronger, crueler. They yanked her hair back, forcing her head up. You've been busy, little wolf, a woman's voice purred in her ear. Nursing a dying king back to health. How noble. I don't know what you're talking about, Lyrra gasped, still struggling. The woman laughed, cold and sharp. Liar. We've been watching you for days. You think we didn't notice the bond forming. You think we couldn't smell it on you. She threw Lyrra forward, and this time when Lyrra hit the ground, she stayed down. Her head spun, her vision blurred. 5 hunters surrounded her now, their eyes glowing with wolf light in the darkness. Not pack wolves, rogues, trained killers. You think you can hide a king? One of them asked, crouching down to her level. His smile was all teeth. You think your pathetic Omega bond is enough to protect him? I don't. Lyrra's voice cracked. I don't understand. You will. The hunter reached for her throat, and the world exploded. Black fur tore through the clearing like a storm-made flesh. The hunter didn't even have time to scream before massive jaws clamped around his throat and ripped. Blood sprayed across the forest floor. The body hit the ground with a wet thud. The wolf stood over Lyrra, his body radiating fury, his golden eyes blazing like twin suns. But this wasn't the wounded, dying creature she'd been nursing. This was something primal, something unstoppable. This was a king. Kill it, the woman shouted. Before the wolf moved. What happened next felt like watching lightning strike in slow motion. He was a blur of black fur and golden light, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. His claws tore through flesh like paper. His jaws crushed bone. The hunters tried to fight back, tried to shift, tried to run, but they were nothing compared to him. One hunter managed to shift mid-leap, fangs bared, aiming for the wolf's throat. The black wolf caught him mid-air, twisted, and slammed him into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. The hunter's neck snapped. He was dead before he hit the ground. To left. The woman pulled a silver blade from her belt, her eyes wild with desperation. "For the rebellion!" she screamed, lunging forward. The wolf's paw caught her across the chest, sending her flying backward. She hit a boulder and didn't get up. The last hunter turned to run. And the wolf shifted. The transformation was brutal, beautiful, terrifying. Bones cracked and reformed. Black fur receded. Muscle and sinew rearranged themselves with sounds that made Lyrra's stomach turn. And then he was human. Tall, impossibly tall, at least 6.5 feet of raw muscle and scarred flesh. His skin was marked with the same golden patterns that had covered his fur, glowing faintly in the darkness. His hair was black as midnight, falling past his shoulders in wild tangles. His face was sharp, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all hard angles and fierce intensity. And his eyes, God, his eyes, molten gold, burning with power and rage and something else. Something that made Lyrra's breath catch. He was naked, covered in blood that wasn't his own, and he was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. The last hunter froze, trembling. "Your Majesty, please. Run," the man said, his voice like thunder rolling across mountains. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them Khaelan Vane is alive. Tell them I'm coming." The hunter ran. Khaelan let him go. Then he turned to Lyrra, and the fury in his eyes softened into something infinitely more dangerous. Tenderness. "Lyrra," he said, and her name on his lips felt like a prayer. She scrambled backward, her mind reeling. How do you know my name?" He took a step toward her, moving slowly, carefully, like she was a wild thing that might bolt. "I've known your name since the third night," he said quietly. "I know everything about you. Your fears, your loneliness, your strength." He pressed a hand to his chest, right over his heart. "The bond showed me." "The bond," Lyrra repeated, her voice hollow. You're not just a wolf. No. They called you king. Yes. You're him." The realization hit her like a physical blow. "You're the Alpha King. The one who disappeared months ago. The one everyone thought was dead." Khaelan's jaw tightened. "I was meant to be. Betrayed by those I trusted, poisoned with Kingsbane silver, left to die in the wilderness." His eyes found hers. "But you saved me. I didn't know. You didn't need to know." He dropped to one knee in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. "You nursed me when I was dying. You fed me when you were starving. You protected me when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose." His hand reached out, hovering just inches from her face. "You gave me kindness when the world had shown me only betrayal." Lyrra's eyes burned with tears. I couldn't let you die. I know." His voice was rough with emotion. "And that's why the bond chose you." "I don't understand." Khaelan's fingers finally made contact, barely a whisper of touch against her cheek, and the bond ignited. Golden light exploded between them, wrapping around their bodies like chains forged from starlight. Lyrra gasped as warmth flooded every cell, every nerve, every hidden corner of her soul. It was overwhelming, terrifying, perfect. And inside her, her wolf didn't just stir. It awoke. Lyrra's back arched as power surged through her body. Her eyes flashed gold. Her canines lengthened. Every sense sharpened to an impossible degree. She could hear Khaelan's heartbeat, could smell the blood and rain and earth, could feel the pulse of life in every living thing around them. "No," she gasped, clutching at her chest. "No, this isn't. I don't have a wolf." "You do now," Khaelan said, his hand cupping her face fully, his thumb brushing away her tears. "The mate bond to an alpha king doesn't just connect souls, Lyrra. It awakens what was sleeping. It completes what was incomplete." Mate bond. The word felt foreign on her tongue. "We're mates," he confirmed, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Chosen by something older than pack law, stronger than destiny. Our bond formed the moment you offered me your bread. It's been growing stronger every night since. Lyrra's mind was spinning, her entire worldview shattering and reforming. But I'm nobody. I'm a rejected Omega, You're mine, Khaelan interrupted, his voice dropping to something primal, possessive. And I am yours. That makes you everything. The golden light pulsed brighter, and Lyrra felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. This wasn't a choice. This wasn't something she could run from. This was fate. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. Khaelan's expression softened. You already are. You were strong enough to show kindness when you had none to spare. Brave enough to heal a predator when you should have run. That's all I need. That's all I've ever needed. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. The bond hummed between them, warm and alive and right. I, Khaelan Vane, Alpha King of the Wolf Kingdoms, claim you as my mate, he murmured, the words carrying the weight of ancient ritual. From this moment until my last breath, you are mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to. A howl split the night. Then another. And another. Khaelan's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. No. What is it? Lyrra asked, fear clawing at her throat. He pulled her to her feet, his body already shifting into a protective stance between her and the forest. More hunters. Too many to fight. They must have been waiting for confirmation. Confirmation of what? Khaelan's eyes met hers, and in them she saw grief and fury and determination. That I'm alive. That I've bonded. His hand tightened on her arm. They will not stop until you are taken from me, Lyrra. The bond makes you dangerous to them, a weakness they can exploit, a weapon they can use against me. The howls grew closer. We have to run, Lyrra said. Yes. Khaelan's jaw set with grim resolve. And we have to run now. He shifted in a burst of golden light, his massive wolf form towering over her once more. He lowered himself, a clear invitation. Lyrra didn't hesitate. She climbed onto his back, her fingers tangling in his fur, and Khaelan ran. The forest blurred around them as he moved with impossible speed, his powerful legs eating up ground, his instincts guiding them away from the approaching hunters. Lyrra held on, her heart pounding, her newly awakened wolf howling inside her chest. Everything had changed. The rejected Omega was gone, and in her place was the mate of a king, hunted, bonded, and about to discover just how far she'd fall before she learned to fly. The forest was a blur of shadow and moonlight. Khaelan's massive paws thundered against the earth, each stride carrying them farther from Dustfall territory and deeper into the wilderness. Lyrra clung to his back, her fingers buried in his fur. Her body pressed low against his spine as branches whipped past close enough to draw blood. Behind them the howls grew louder. They're gaining, she thought, panic rising in her throat. Khaelan's response came not in words but in sensation, a pulse of fierce determination through the bond, a promise that felt like steel wrapped in fire. I won't let them take you. Lyrra's breath hitched. She could feel him, not just physically but deeper. His emotions bleeding into hers, his resolve becoming her own. It was disorienting, terrifying, and strangely comforting all at once. How many? She gasped, barely able to hear herself over the wind. Khaelan snarled, a sound that vibrated through his entire body. Too many. They burst through a stream, water spraying in silver arcs, and Khaelan veered sharply left, his claws finding purchase on slick stones. A wolf lunged from the darkness, gray fur, foam at its muzzle, eyes wild with bloodlust. Khaelan twisted mid-stride, his jaws snapping out with brutal precision. The attacker's yelp cut short as Khaelan's teeth found its throat. He didn't slow, didn't stop, just dropped the body and kept running. Lyrra's stomach churned, but she forced herself to focus. There are more ahead, she said, the words tumbling out before she understood how she knew. 3 of them. Circling. Khaelan's ears flicked back, surprised. How do you know? Lyra's eyes widened as realization struck. I can feel them. Her senses were changing, sharpening. She could smell the rot of rogue wolves on the wind, could hear heartbeats in the distance, could sense the predators moving through the darkness like shadows with teeth. Her wolf was waking, and it hurt. Pain lanced through her spine, her bones feeling like they were trying to break and reform all at once. She gasped, her grip on Khaelan's fur faltering. Hold on, he commanded through the bond, his mental voice sharp with concern. Just hold on. 2 wolves burst from the underbrush on either side. Khaelan leaped, twisting in midair with impossible grace. His back paw caught one attacker across the muzzle, sending it tumbling. The second lunged for Lyrra, and she moved. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She released Khaelan's fur, threw herself sideways, hit the ground rolling. The wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air where her leg had been a heartbeat before. Khaelan landed, spun, and was on the attacker in seconds. The fight was brutal and brief. Blood painted the leaves. Lyrra pushed herself upright, her hands shaking, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. How did I? Your wolf is awakening, Khaelan said, his human voice cutting through the darkness. He'd shifted again, standing naked and blood-streaked in the moonlight, his chest heaving. The mate bond accelerates the change. Your instincts are surfacing faster than your body can adapt. It feels like I'm dying, Lyrra whispered. Khaelan's expression softened with something that looked like pain. I know, but you're not dying. You're being reborn. He moved toward her, his hand outstretched. We need to keep moving. They'll regroup and... A howl split the night, closer than before, much closer. How many pack territories have we crossed? Lyrra asked. 3. Khaelan pulled her to her feet, his hands steadying her when she swayed. We're heading toward the Vale, the wild lands between kingdoms where pack law doesn't reach. Why there? His jaw tightened. Because it's the only place they might not follow. Might, Lyrra noticed. Not won't. Khaelan shifted again and they ran. They reached the edge of Dustfall territory just before dawn. Lyrra could feel the shift in the air. The way the pack bonds that had always been closed to her suddenly felt like walls falling away. Free. Untethered. Terrifying. The Vale is half a mile ahead, Khaelan said, his voice rough. He was still in wolf form, but something was wrong. His stride had become uneven. His breathing labored. Are you hurt? Lyrra asked, leaning forward to check his shoulder where a rogue had landed a glancing blow. I'm fine. You're lying. She could feel it through the bond. A thread of pain he was trying to hide, a weakness he didn't want her to see. I said I'm fine. But he wasn't. 20 minutes later he collapsed. They'd found shelter in an abandoned den, likely a fox's home once, now empty and half-buried beneath twisted roots. Khaelan had shifted back to human form the moment they were inside, and now he lay on the dirt floor, his skin pale and slicked with sweat, his breathing shallow. What's happening? Lyrra demanded, her hands hovering over him, unsure where to touch, how to help. What's wrong? Kingsbane silver, Khaelan ground out through clenched teeth. The poison they used when they tried to kill me. It's still in my system. Lyrra's blood ran cold. But you were healing. You were getting stronger. The bond was helping. Your care, your presence. It was slowing the poison's spread. His eyes found hers, glowing faintly in the darkness. But an incomplete bond can only do so much. Without the full connection, the Kingsbane is winning. Incomplete. Lyrra's voice cracked. What does that mean? Khaelan's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with desperate strength. A mate bond has stages. Recognition. Acceptance. Completion. We've reached the second stage, but not the third. Then we complete it, Lyrra said immediately. Tell me what to do. It's not that simple. Pain flickered across his face. Not physical, but something deeper. Completion requires full acceptance from both parties. Total surrender to the bond. And you. His thumb brushed over her pulse point. You're still fighting it. Your wolf is resisting because you don't trust what's happening to you. Lyrra pulled her hand back as if burned. That's not. You can feel it, can't you? Khaelan's voice was gentle despite the agony etched into every line of his body. The bond pulling at you. Your wolf clawing to get out. Every instinct screaming at you to run because this is too much, too fast, too. Stop. Lyra's hands pressed against her temples, her eyes squeezing shut. Just stop. But she couldn't stop the truth. He was right. Every word. Her wolf was resisting. Not because she didn't want the bond, but because she was terrified of it. Terrified of the power, the responsibility, the vulnerability it demanded. Terrified of being wanted after a lifetime of rejection. Phantom pain lanced through her chest, sharp and cold like ice spreading through her veins. She gasped, her eyes flying open. What was that? Khaelan's expression was grim. The bond destabilizing. When one half fights while the other weakens. He trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. I'm killing him. No, Lyrra whispered. No, that's not. I'm not trying to. Another wave of pain hit, worse this time. She could feel it in her bones, her blood, her soul. Feel Khaelan's life force flickering like a candle in a storm. You need to leave, Khaelan said suddenly, his voice raw. The hunters are still tracking us. If they find us here with me like this, they'll take you. Use you. I'm not leaving you. Lyrra. I'm not leaving you, she repeated, her voice stronger now, fierce. You didn't leave me when you were dying. I'm not abandoning you now. Khaelan tried to sit up, failed, fell back with a curse. I'm an alpha king. I've survived wars, betrayals, assassination attempts. I can. You can what? Die alone in a hole in the ground. Lyrra moved closer, her hands framing his face, forcing him to look at her. You said the bond chose me. You said I was yours. Well, that makes you mine too. And I don't let go of what's mine. Something shifted in Khaelan's eyes. Surprise, hope, something that looked like awe. The bond needs acceptance, he said quietly. True, willing acceptance. Not because you're afraid of losing me, but because you want. I want you, Lyrra interrupted, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. I'm terrified, yes. I don't understand half of what's happening, and I feel like I'm drowning in power I never asked for. But I want you. I wanted you when you were a dying wolf who couldn't speak. I wanted you when you were just golden eyes in the darkness listening to my secrets. And I want you now. Khaelan's breath caught. Lyrra, tell me what to do, she demanded. Tell me how to complete the bond. You have to stop fighting your wolf. Let her surface. Let her recognize me as mate. His hand covered hers where it rested against his cheek. It will hurt. The full awakening, it's not gentle. I don't care. You might shift. Lose control. I don't care. Lyrra leaned closer, her forehead pressing against his. I'm not afraid of pain. I'm afraid of losing you. For a long moment, Khaelan just stared at her. Then, slowly, reverently, he pulled her down until their lips were a breath apart. Then let go, he whispered. Stop fighting. Stop fearing. Just let go. Lyrra closed her eyes and reached for the bond. It was like grabbing a live wire. Power exploded through every nerve, every cell, every hidden corner of her being. The bond that had been a gentle warmth became an inferno, burning away every wall she'd built, every defense she'd erected, every lie she'd told herself about being broken and unwanted and alone. Inside her, her wolf roared. Not in pain. In triumph. Golden light burst from Lyrra's skin, brighter than the sun, hotter than fire, ancient as the first wolf who ever ran beneath the moon. It wrapped around her and Khaelan both, binding them, changing them, completing them. Lyrra's back arched as her bones began to shift. Her canines elongated. Her nails sharpened into claws. Power flooded her muscles, her senses exploding with input so overwhelming she couldn't process it all. She could hear Khaelan's heartbeat syncing with hers. Could smell the Kingsbane silver burning out of his system, driven back by the sheer force of the completed bond. Could feel his soul wrapping around hers like they'd been two halves of the same whole, finally made complete. "That's it," Khaelan breathed. His voice filled with wonder and relief and something that sounded like worship. "That's my mate. My queen. My." Lyrra's eyes snapped open. They were pure molten gold. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone in her own skin. "Hello," her wolf whispered, her voice ancient and powerful in hers. "We've been waiting for you." The golden light pulsed once more, blinding, beautiful, and then settled into a steady glow beneath their skin. The bond was complete. Khaelan sat up, the color returning to his face, the poison's hold broken. He cupped Lyrra's face in both hands, his eyes shining with tears he didn't bother to hide. "Welcome back," he said, his voice breaking. "Both of you." Lyrra opened her mouth to respond, and a howl echoed through the forest. Not behind them. Ahead. Khaelan's expression hardened. "They've surrounded us." "How many?" Lyrra asked, and was shocked by the calm in her own voice. "Too many to fight. Not enough to stop us." He stood, pulling her up with him, and his smile was all teeth and danger. "Are you ready to run with me, my queen?" Lyrra's wolf snarled with anticipation. "Always." And together they ran toward the dawn, hunted, bonded, and utterly unstoppable. The transformation didn't come all at once. It started with her eyes, the brown draining away like water through sand, replaced by molten gold shot through with streaks of amber that caught the dawn light and threw it back fiercer, brighter. Then her senses exploded outward in waves that nearly drove her to her knees. She could hear everything. The rustle of a mouse in the underbrush 40 feet away. The whisper of wind through pine needles. Khaelan's heartbeat, steady, strong, perfectly synchronized with her own. She could smell the approaching enemy before she could see them. Wolf musk and fear sweat and something darker. Magic. Blood magic. "Khaelan," she breathed, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. Lower, richer, touched with something ancient. "They're close." "I know." He stood beside her, fully healed now, the Kingsbane silver purged from his system by the completed bond. His skin had regained its bronze glow, the golden marks that covered his body pulsing with power. 17 wolves, 3 in human form, and something else. His lips pulled back from his teeth. "A sorcerer." Lyrra's newly awakened wolf snarled in response. The sound that emerged from her throat was distinctly not human. "Your transformation is incomplete," Khaelan said, his eyes tracking over her with clinical assessment even as concern bled through the bond. "You should be shifting fully into wolf form, but instead." "I feel like I'm caught between," Lyrra finished, looking down at her hands. Her nails had lengthened into claws, not fully wolf but not human either. Her muscles had become denser, stronger, her frame more powerful. She could feel her canines pressing against her lower lip, her spine tingling with the promise of a shift that wouldn't quite complete. "What's wrong with me?" "Nothing is wrong." Khaelan's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers despite the claws. "You're becoming what you were always meant to be. Something rare. Something the old texts called." The forest exploded with howls. They came from all sides. Gray wolves, brown wolves, one massive black wolf with a white star on its chest. 17 sets of eyes glowing in the growing light. And at the center, 3 figures in human form. Lyrra's breath caught. She knew one of them. "Sylvena," she whispered. The beta's daughter stood tall and proud, her auburn hair braided back in intricate warrior patterns, silver daggers strapped to her thighs. She'd always been beautiful, the kind of beauty that came with confidence and power and the absolute certainty of her own worth. The kind of beauty Lyrra had envied as a child. Now, Sylvena's green eyes were cold with hatred. "I told father you should have been culled as a pup," Sylvena called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. "He thought you were harmless, broken, Just another pathetic Omega to warm beds and bear children. Her smile was cruel. But I knew better. Beside Sylvena stood a man Lyrra didn't recognize. Massive, scarred, with the bearing of a warrior. And on her other side, a sorcerer. He wore a mask of bone and copper, intricate runes carved into the surface that seemed to writhe in the dawn light. His robes were black as midnight, and the air around him shimmered with power that made Lyrra's skin crawl. "Alpha King Khaelan Vane," the sorcerer said. His voice like gravel scraped over glass. "You were supposed to die. The poison should have stopped your heart weeks ago." "I had help," Khaelan replied. His tone conversational despite the tension singing through his body. Lyrra could feel him preparing for battle. Muscles coiling, instincts sharpening. Funny how a little kindness can undo the best-laid plans. "Kindness?" The sorcerer laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Is that what you call it? You bonded with an Omega. Tied your power to something weak." Lyrra's wolf bristled, rage flooding hot and sudden through her veins. "Not weak," her wolf snarled. "Never weak." "You don't know what she is," Khaelan said quietly, and there was warning in his voice. A promise of violence barely held in check. "I know enough." The sorcerer raised his hand, and dark energy began to coalesce around his fingers. "I know she's a liability, tool to control you. And once we sever your bond and take her—" "Try," Khaelan interrupted, his voice dropping to something primal and deadly. "Please. I would love an excuse." The sorcerer's hand clenched into a fist, and the attack came. Dark magic lashed out like a whip, not aimed at Khaelan but at Lyrra. The bond itself. She felt it strike like a knife between her ribs, felt the sorcerer's power trying to cut, to sever the golden thread that bound her soul to Khaelan's. Pain exploded through her chest. She screamed, and something inside her erupted. Golden light burst from her body in a wave that sent wolves tumbling backward. Not fire, not heat, something else. Something that felt like dawn breaking after the longest night, like hope given form and fury. The sorcerer's spell shattered against it like glass against stone. Lyrra stood at the center of the golden light, her eyes blazing, her body crackling with power she didn't understand but somehow knew how to wield. The hybrid state she was trapped in, half-shifted, caught between human and wolf, suddenly made terrible sense. She wasn't incomplete. She was evolved. "Dawn-bound," Khaelan breathed, wonder and fierce pride flooding the bond. "You're a dawn-bound Omega." "What?" Lyrra started to ask, but the wolves were attacking. Khaelan shifted in an explosion of black fur and golden light, meeting the first wave head-on. His jaws closed around a gray wolf's throat, his claws tearing through flesh and bone with brutal efficiency. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, devastating, a king reclaiming his throne one corpse at a time. But Lyrra fought differently. A brown wolf lunged for her throat. She didn't dodge, she pushed. Not with her hands, but with something deeper. With emotion. Fear slammed into the attacking wolf like a physical force, sending it whimpering and scrambling backward, its tail tucked, its eyes wide with primal terror. Another attacker came from her left. This time, Lyrra projected confusion, a disorienting wave that left the wolf stumbling, snapping at shadows that weren't there. "What is she doing?" someone shouted. "How is she?" "She's weaponizing the Omega gift," the scarred warrior said. His voice tinged with something that might have been respect, or fear. "Empathic projection. But I've never seen it used like this." Lyrra didn't have time to think about what she was doing. She just felt, and her emotions became weapons. Grief became paralysis. Rage became berserker fury that turned the enemy wolves against each other. Love, fierce, protective, burning, became a shield that wrapped around Khaelan when three wolves tried to drag him down. Together they were devastating. Khaelan's raw physical power combined with Lyrra's emotional manipulation created a battlefield symphony of chaos and precision. Wolves fell. Blood painted the earth. And through it all, the bond between them sang with shared purpose and perfect unity. The sorcerer watched it all, his masked face unreadable, and then raised both hands. "Enough," he hissed. Dark energy gathered around him. More than before, so much more. It coalesced into chains of shadow and blood-red light, writhing like living things. He thrust his hands forward, and the chains shot toward Lyrra and Khaelan both. Not to wound, to bind. The chains wrapped around the bond itself, around the golden thread that connected their souls, and squeezed. Lyrra felt it like a vice closing around her heart. She gasped, dropping to one knee, her vision blurring. "No," her wolf snarled. "Mo. This is over." Through the pain, through the sorcerer's magic trying to rip her apart from the inside, Lyrra reached deep, past the fear, past the agony, down to the core of what she'd become. Dawnbound. She didn't fully understand what it meant, but she could feel it. Power that wasn't just strength or speed or heightened senses. Power rooted in connection, in the ability to touch hearts and minds, to channel emotion into reality. And right now she channeled defiance. Golden light exploded from her body, brighter than before, hot as a star, ancient as the first sunrise. It wrapped around the sorcerer's chains and burned. The dark magic screamed as it dissolved, the sorcerer staggering backward with a howl of pain. "Impossible," he gasped, clutching his hands to his chest. "You're just an Omega, you can't." "She's not just anything," Khaelan snarled, back in human form now, standing at Lyrra's side. Blood dripped from his claws. His eyes burned like molten gold. "She's my mate, my queen. And you just made the mistake of threatening her." The remaining wolves backed away, fear finally overriding their orders. Sylvena alone stood her ground, though Lyrra could see her hands trembling. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking with rage and something else, something that sounded almost like desperation. She was always a threat. Even as a child, even without her wolf, we could feel it. That wrongness. That potential. Wrongness. Lyrra echoed, her voice still carrying those strange harmonics. "You mean my existence? The fact that I dared to be born different? The fact that you were dangerous?" Sylvena spat. "Do you think it was coincidence that the pack rejected you? That we kept you isolated, powerless, alone?" Her laugh was bitter. "My father knew what you might become. So when the chance came to use you, to offer you to the king's enemies as bait, to help them find and poison him, your father betrayed me." Khaelan's voice was deadly quiet. "The Dustfall Beta. He was part of the conspiracy. He did what was necessary." Sylvena's composure cracked, desperation bleeding through. "You were going to unite the kingdoms, end the territorial wars, create peace." She said the word like a curse. "Do you know what that would mean for packs like ours? For warriors like us? We'd become obsolete, useless. So yes, we allied with those who wanted you dead. And we used her," she pointed at Lyrra, "as the perfect trap. The rejected Omega who'd do anything for a kind word. Who'd nurse a wounded wolf without asking questions." The betrayal hit Lyrra like a physical blow. You knew. When I found him. When I was caring for him. You knew. "We were watching," Sylvena confirmed. "Waiting for you to lead us to him. Waiting for the bond to form so we could use it to control him, or failing that, to kill you both." Her smile was vicious. "But you surprised us. You actually managed to keep him alive long enough to complete the bond. Managed to become something we didn't expect. And now you're terrified," Lyrra said quietly, understanding dawning. "Because I'm not the powerless Omega you remember. Because the bond didn't make me weak, it made me whole." Sylvena's hand moved toward her dagger. Lyrra could have struck first. Could have projected terror or rage or any of a dozen emotions that would have brought Sylvena to her knees. Instead she stepped forward, unarmed, undefended, and met Sylvena's eyes. "I don't forgive you," Lyrra said clearly. "What you did, what your father did, there's no excuse for that. You used my loneliness as a weapon. You tried to kill the first person who ever showed me genuine kindness." Her hands clenched into fists. But I'm not going to kill you. Sylvena blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What? You expected me to be like you, Lyrra continued. To answer cruelty with cruelty. But that's not who I am. It's not who I'm going to become, no matter how much power I have now. She glanced at Khaelan, who watched her with fierce pride. I was rejected because I was different. I'm not going to reject my own humanity just to prove I'm strong enough. You're a fool, Sylvena hissed. Maybe. Lyrra's smile was sad. But I'm a free fool. While you. She gestured to the dead wolves littering the clearing, to the sorcerer clutching his burned hands. You're still chained to your fear. To your father's choices. To the belief that power only comes from dominance and death. For a moment, something flickered in Sylvena's eyes. Regret. Understanding. It was gone too quickly to tell. Then the sorcerer spoke. His voice ragged with pain and fury. This isn't over, he gasped, already retreating toward the treeline. The rebellion has allies you can't imagine. Armies you can't defeat. And they will come for both of you. His masked face turned toward Lyrra. Especially you, dawn-bound. Do you know how rare you are? How valuable? They'll dissect you to understand your power. They'll use you to create weapons. They can try, Khaelan interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. But they'll have to go through me first. And I promise you. His smile was all teeth and promise of violence. That's not a fight anyone will survive. The sorcerer laughed. Broken, bitter. We'll see, Wolf King. We'll see. Then he was gone, dissolving into shadows that scattered like smoke in the wind. Sylvena looked between Lyrra and Khaelan, something complicated crossing her face. Then she shifted, a sleek auburn wolf, and ran. The remaining enemy wolves fled with her. Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by Lyrra and Khaelan's synchronized breathing and the distant call of mourning birds. You showed her mercy, Khaelan said quietly. Yes. Even after everything she did. Everything she tried to do. Yes. Lyrra turned to face him fully, her golden amber eyes meeting his molten gold. Because mercy is a choice, not a weakness. And I choose who I want to be. Not them. Me. Khaelan crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The bond flared bright and warm, wrapping around them both like a benediction. My queen, he murmured against her hair. My fierce, merciful, impossible queen. Lyrra melted into him, letting the adrenaline drain away, letting herself feel the fear and relief and wonder all at once. What happens now? Now. Khaelan pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. Now we run. The sorcerer was right about one thing. They'll come with greater numbers. And until we reach my remaining allies, until we can rebuild and strike back. We survive, Lyrra finished. We survive, he agreed. Then his expression softened. Together. Together, she echoed, and the bond sang its agreement. As they turned to leave the clearing, leaving behind the dead, the betrayal, the girl Lyrra used to be, the dawn broke fully over the horizon. Golden light spilled through the trees, painting everything in shades of hope and new beginnings. And somewhere in the distance, an army began to march. Ember Grove rose from the forest like something out of legend. The hidden Alpha Kingdom wasn't built, it was grown. Ancient trees with trunks wider than houses formed living walls, their branches woven together overhead in intricate patterns that filtered sunlight into golden columns. Stone structures spiraled up around the trees, carved with runes that pulsed with soft silver light. Waterfalls cascaded down terraced levels, their music harmonizing with the distant howls of wolves welcoming their king home. It was beautiful, powerful, ancient. And every eye was on Lyrra. She walked beside Khaelan through the main courtyard, her hand firmly in his, trying not to let her newfound senses overwhelm her. She could feel their gazes like physical weight, curiosity, suspicion, confusion. The wolves of the royal pack were enormous, powerful creatures who moved with the confidence of those who'd never known rejection. They didn't know what to make of her. Steady, Khaelan murmured through the bond, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You belong here. Do I? Lyrra whispered back, watching a cluster of elegantly dressed women, clearly high-ranking pack members, lean together and whisper. They look at me like I'm a puzzle they can't solve. Good. Khaelan's smile was fierce and proud. You were never meant to be easily understood. They climbed the steps to the central platform, a massive circle of white stone carved with scenes of ancient battles and legendary wolves. At the center stood an ornate throne of living wood and precious metals, roots and branches grown together over centuries to form a seat of power. Khaelan's throne. But he didn't sit. Instead, he turned to face the assembled pack, still holding Lyrra's hand, and his voice rang out with the unmistakable authority of an alpha king. I have returned, he said simply. The pack erupted with howls, relief, joy, loyalty given voice. It went on for nearly a minute before Khaelan raised his free hand for silence. I was betrayed, he continued, his tone hardening. Poisoned with Kingsbane silver and left to die in enemy territory. The conspiracy runs deeper than we knew, reaching into packs we thought were allies. His eyes swept the crowd, noting who met his gaze and who looked away. The Dustfall Beta is complicit. Others may be as well. We will root them out. We will answer their betrayal with justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shock, anger, determination. But that is not why I brought you together today. Khaelan's expression softened as he looked at Lyrra, and through the bond, she felt such tenderness it made her chest ache. I lived because of her. This woman, Lyrra of Dustfall, rejected by her pack, cast aside as worthless. She found me dying and chose kindness when she had every reason to walk away. More whispers. Lyrra could pick out individual voices now with her enhanced hearing. An Omega. But she's barely transformed. I heard she had no wolf at all until. She saved me, Khaelan said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Healed me. Protected me when enemies came hunting. And in doing so, she awakened something that hasn't been seen in 1,000 years. He turned her to face the crowd fully. Lyrra is dawn-bound, a hybrid between Omega empathic gifts and alpha strength. Her wolf awakened through our mate bond, and her power is unlike anything you've witnessed. Prove it, someone called from the crowd, a massive gray wolf with scars across his muzzle. Lyrra's first instinct was to shrink back. This was what happened in Dustfall. Challenged, tested, found wanting. But she wasn't in Dustfall anymore. And she wasn't the same girl who'd been rejected all her life. She stepped forward, releasing Khaelan's hand. The gray wolf shifted to human form. An older man, powerfully built, with eyes that assessed her with warrior's calculation. No disrespect intended, Alpha King, he said, inclining his head to Khaelan. But words are wind. If this Omega is to be our queen, we need to see. Lyrra didn't let him finish. She reached for the power that had awakened in the battle. Not violently, not aggressively, but with calm purpose. Golden light bloomed from her skin, warm and radiant, washing over the assembled wolves in waves. And with it came emotion. Not projected fear or rage like she'd used against enemies. This was different. This was the feeling of coming home after a long journey. The warmth of pack bonds, of belonging, of safety and acceptance. It was every good memory, every moment of connection, every time a wolf had felt truly seen by their family. It was everything Lyrra had longed for her entire life, given freely to those around her. The wolves gasped as one. Some dropped to their knees. Others shifted involuntarily, their wolves responding to the deep, primal rightness of what they were feeling. The gray-scarred warrior stared at her with wide eyes. His expression transformed. By the ancient mothers, he breathed. I've never. How did you? Lyrra let the power fade gently, and the golden light dimmed. That's what I am, she said quietly, addressing not just him but everyone. I won't lie to you. I don't fully understand my own abilities yet. My wolf is newly awakened, and I'm learning what it means to be dawn-bound with every passing moment. She took a breath, steadying herself. I was rejected by Dustfall because I was different. Because I didn't fit their expectations of what an Omega should be. And maybe I don't fit yours either. She could see some wolves nodding, uncertainty still in their eyes. But here's what I know, Lyrra continued, her voice gaining strength. I know what it's like to be cast aside. To be considered worthless. To watch others live the life you'll never have because you were born wrong. Her hands clenched at her sides. And I know I never want anyone to feel that way again. If I stand beside your king, if you accept me as your queen, I promise you this. I will fight for every wolf who's been rejected, overlooked, or deemed too weak to matter. I will use this power not to dominate, but to protect. To heal what's been broken. She paused, meeting as many eyes as she could. I didn't choose to be dawn-bound, she said softly. But I choose what I do with it. I choose to stand with Khaelan against those who would tear the kingdoms apart. I choose to help build something better than endless war and betrayal. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every wolf heard it clearly. And I choose to be worthy of the trust you place in me, not because fate decided we should be bonded, but because every day I will earn it. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then the gray-scarred warrior dropped to one knee, his fist over his heart. I am Torvin, captain of the Royal Guard, he said formally. And I recognize you, Lyrra Dawn-bound, as my queen. One by one, the other wolves followed, kneeling, acknowledging, accepting. Not all of them. Lyrra could see clusters who remained standing, faces tight with suspicion or calculation. But enough. More than enough. Khaelan's hand found hers again, and through the bond, she felt his fierce pride and love washing over her in waves. Well said, my queen. Don't call me that yet, Lyrra murmured, suddenly feeling the weight of what she'd just committed to. I haven't. We haven't actually. Then let us remedy that. Khaelan's voice carried across the courtyard. We will perform the claiming ritual at sunset. All are welcome to witness. The ritual space was on the highest terrace of Embergrove, open to the sky, ringed by standing stones carved with the names of every alpha king and queen who'd ever ruled. The pack gathered in a circle around them as the sun painted the horizon in shades of crimson and gold. Lyrra wore robes of deep midnight blue shot through with silver thread, traditional garb for the claiming ceremony. Her heart hammered as an elder wolf stepped forward, carrying a bowl of ceremonial wine mixed with herbs that would strengthen pack bonds. Do you come to this claiming of your own free will? The elder asked, her voice aged but strong. I do, Lyrra said clearly. Do you accept the bond that fate has woven, and pledge yourself to the service of the pack, the kingdom, and your mate? Lyrra's eyes found Khaelan's. He stood across from her in robes of black and gold, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. Through the bond, she could feel his nervousness, his hope, his desperate wish that she truly wanted this. She did. Not because destiny demanded it. Not because the mate bond left her no choice. But because in the short time she'd known him, Khaelan had shown her what it meant to be valued. To be protected without being controlled. To be loved not despite her differences, but because of them. I accept, she said, her voice steady. Not because fate demands it, but because I choose it. Choose him. I choose this life. I choose to stand and fight and love and grow into whoever I'm meant to become. She stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. I choose us. Khaelan's control shattered. He closed the distance between them in a single stride, his hands framing her face as he kissed her, deep and desperate and full of promises. The bond between them erupted with golden light, brighter than before, strong enough that every wolf could see it. It wrapped around them like living fire, burning away the last traces of poison, of pain, of all the years Lyrra had spent believing she was broken. When they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, Khaelan pressed his forehead to hers. My mate, he murmured loud enough for all to hear. My queen. My Lyrra. My Khaelan, she replied, and the bond settled into something stable and unbreakable, a foundation they could build a future on. The pack erupted in howls of celebration, the sound carrying across the forest and beyond. Later, when the celebrations had quieted and the moon hung heavy in the sky, Lyrra stood on the battlements overlooking the kingdom. Khaelan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Which part?" "The bond. The claiming. Becoming queen of a kingdom I knew nothing about a week ago." She leaned back into his warmth. "No, I don't regret any of it. Even knowing what's coming." His voice turned grim. "The sorcerer will return with an army. The traitors won't stop just because we expose them. This war is far from over." "I know." Lyrra turned in his arms to face him. "But I'm not the helpless Omega they tried to use anymore. And you're not fighting alone." She glanced down at the kingdom spread below them, wolves moving through the terraced levels, lights glowing in carved stone dwellings, the sound of life and loyalty and home. "We have a pack. We have each other. And we have something they'll never understand." "What's that?" "Hope." Lyrra's smile was soft but fierce. "They fight for power, for dominance, for the right to rule through fear. We fight for something better. For a future where wolves like me aren't cast aside. Where strength doesn't only come from violence. Where bonds matter more than bloodlines." Khaelan's eyes shone with emotion. "You're going to change everything, aren't you?" "We are," she corrected. "Together." In the distance, beyond the boundaries of Embergrove, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Somewhere out there, enemies plotted and armies assembled. The rebellion wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. But Lyrra wasn't afraid. She had spent her entire life as the rejected Omega. Powerless, alone, told she would never amount to anything. She had been the girl who couldn't shift, who didn't belong, who was used and discarded without a second thought. But standing on the battlements of Embergrove, wrapped in her mate's arms, her wolf singing with newly awakened power, the golden bond pulsing steady and true between them, she was none of those things anymore. She was Lyrra Dawnbound, mate to the Alpha King, Queen of the Wolves. And she was only just beginning to understand what that meant. The rejected Omega had found her place in the world. And the world would never be the same.